Hi, so you have looked at food reserves. What did your research find in terms of the pitfalls or strengths of a food reserve?
Well, one of the main findings that we came across was that using the U.S. wheat reserve as an example, when government reserves composed of government reserves that make up the majority of food reserves in the case of U.S., it distorts the normal market relationship between reserves and prices. A normal relationship is an inverse one between the two. So when stocks are low, when reserves are low, prices tend to be high, and vice versa. However, in the case of the U.S., which saw a huge buildup in wheat reserve by the mid 80s, when there's a large level of government reserve dwarfing commercial stocks, that normal relationship gets disrupted, and there's no statistical correlation between government reserve and prices anymore. So that's one of the major findings, and so in terms of proposals and ideas out there talking about building up an international grain reserve or food reserve, I just want to offer the caution that it may have very serious unintended consequences, that it may not really address price volatility, because we saw in the regression analysis that the relationship is disrupted. And another lesson from looking at reserves is that we find it's frequently ineffective in addressing food insecurity and market volatility. It was no match for export restrictions. The lesson is particularly relevant from last year's food price crisis in the case of rice, when major exporting countries such as Vietnam and India and China started basically restricting their exports of rice. It sent shockwaves through the world market, and prices soared as a consequence. And the irony is that there was no shortage of rice during that period. In fact, rice reserves held in these major exporting countries have been growing for 5 years in a row. However, when a select few countries put in export bans, the large levels of reserve is ineffective to counter the shock wave and the price spike brought on by those trade policy moves.
Right. And so, in thinking about what governments and international institutions should do or invest in trying to address global hunger or food security, what are some of the other tools that they should be looking at from your perspective?
One alternative that we believe should be explored more is maybe setting up a financial reserve instead of a grain reserve, using the financial reserve to help countries, the most needy countries, to import grains during times of shortage and price spikes, and also to help producers in these developing countries to increase productivity by supporting them with purchase of seeds, of fertilizers, machinery, basically agriculture inputs, production inputs, and maybe also brain power in the form of land management consultant, etc. This could be a more effective way of boosting production without distorting market prices. And also, we believe that one factor behind last year's food price crisis, as recognized by many, was the many years of decline in productivity growth, especially in developing countries. Productivity growth in developing countries have not kept up with population and demand growth. And so we want to bring government's attention to this area and to refocus attention and investment in boosting productivity growth. And that has to be coupled with investment in infrastructure, in transportation, which is critical to link producers with consumers and to markets, and also to help bring the supplies to the needed population.
Great. Thanks very much.
Thank you.